morning, good afternoon, and good early morning for those of you who are checking in. We are so delighted to have the author of our book of the night, The Five Sorrowful Mysteries of Andy Africa. Stephen is actually joining us 6 hours ahead. So if you're on the East Coast, Stephen has taken his time to be here with us to talk about this book, and we are so delighted to have you here. Thank you so much for staying up late, early. I'm not sure how you look at
Yeah.
it. I'm really, really happy that you're here and can't wait to dig into this book. So let me start with my early question. How are you feeling today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Demetrius. And I'm so happy to be here this morning, right? It's morning for me here.
Morning. We're trying
Yeah,
to figure it out, right?
yeah, and yeah. So I had I slept a few hours ago, so I'm wide awake anyway. So no one should be afraid of me. Should be afraid of me falling off. Yeah, falling off
Yeah.
asleep at all. Yeah. So I'm doing well, and yeah, I'm in a good day so far. I mean, a good morning. It's already morning anyway, so it's yeah. I'm looking forward to the interview. Looking forward to chatting with you
I would say
today.
grab some
Yeah,
coffee, but we don't want you to stay up
yeah,
late, early.
yeah.
I don't know how that's
So,
going to work. But
so I
anyway,
have a cup of tea here anyway. So
tea.
it's
There we
I
go.
think that should
That's a
yeah
better choice.
that
You're
should
the smart
suffice.
guy in the
Yeah.
room today. So listen, if you are in the
Yeah.
chat, please welcome our special guest, Stephen Buoro. We are so excited to be talking about this book. One, if you have not read it, we definitely suggest you pick it up. Go to your library, download it on your device. Come check us out at Resist Booksellers. Wherever you pick up your books, make sure to pick that book up. I do want to give a quick bio, and then we're going to jump right into tonight's content. So, about the author, Stephen Buoro was born in Nigeria in 1993. He has received a degree in mathematics. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, and an MA in creative writing from the University of East Anglia as the recipient of the Booker Prize Foundation Scholarship. He's also received the Deborah Rogers Foundation Award. He lives in Norwich, United Kingdom, which I think that's where you're checking in from tonight, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So please give a warm welcome to our special guest, Stephen Burrow.
Yeah. Thank you so much for I mean
So let me
for the
ask you
one
this
welcome as
question.
well.
I want to
Yeah.
get you started, get you talking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Tell us about the book. So
Okay.
in your, we always do these interviews and we read the bio and the flap
Yeah.
jacket, but
Yeah.
this is your baby. This is your first novel. So I
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to give the honor to you to be able to describe your book to people who may not have read it, picked it up yet.
Yeah.
Describe the book to the people.
Yes, so my novel, The Five Sorrowful Mysteries of Andy Africa, is it's a coming of age story set in present day Nigeria. So it's about Andy Aziza, a smart and funny 15-year-old Nigerian boy who is obsessed with blondes, I mean, with whiteness, the West, and as well as who his true father is. He's ashamed of his poor and uneducated mother, who is a photographer. So the novel is about how these feelings of shame and obsession become intensified when Andy's life is suddenly destabilized by communal violence, by religious riots in his community. Yeah.
No, that's a great explanation. And I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna give you a confession early. When I started reading the book, I want to say in the first couple pages, you described Andy's love and affection for long hair, blue eyes, and all that stuff. And I was thinking, I don't want to read this book. It's going to be all about that. And you did a wonderful job of kind of mixing that into the space. And we're going to get a little bit more into that as we go along. But before this book came out, walk us through like what was your inspiration for even writing? This is your first book out in the world. How did you get from I want to write a book or write this book, and now you are a published author of this book out in the world? How did that happen?
Yeah, it's a very long story. I don't know whether we have like 10 years to talk about this, because I can talk about this for I mean a very long period of time anyway. So I think to talk about my writing, I have to talk about my reading experience, right? So I grew up in northern Nigeria, and my parents only had like basic education, right? So at home I didn't have like books around me, and they were just like religious texts, the Bible and all that. And so anyway, and I learned how to read a bit late in my life. I learned how to read when I was around 8 years old. Yeah, so whenever I got scholarship to a missionary school, a school founded by Irish missionaries. Yeah, and the school they had this library, which is this library, which was made up of books from like donations from Irish families, Irish children, and all that. And so that was where I began to read. Yeah, I think that should be around 2002, three or something when I began to read. Anyway, yeah. So and soon after I began to read, I found myself writing. I mean, this was in 2005, actually, a few months after my father had died. So one afternoon, sorry, one afternoon I was sitting outside my house. I mean, it was very hot, and then like in the summer, around like 30 something degrees Celsius and all, like I don't know the conversion in Fahrenheit, right? Whatever. So it was quite hot, and I was just sitting outside my house. I had completed my assignments, and then I suddenly found myself writing a story, and it was a bit weird, but it was fun, and I also felt illegal at the same time, right? Anyway, I found myself writing a story, and it was about a war in the animal kingdom, how the fish were ostracized from the land, they were chased from the land, forced to live and adapt in water. I mean, they only had the water to live in, so they had to adapt there anyway. And so the story was about how they struggled, the war, and the struggle to adapt. Um, and I remember showing the story to one of my schoolmates who, after reading the story, he didn't believe that I was the one who wrote it. Yeah, I did all I could to convince him, but he just never believed me, And in a sense, all the writing I've done since then has been like a way of me trying to maybe prove to him or prove to myself, I don't know, but just to write anyway to prove that I could do this anyway. And yeah, so since then, since 2005, I've been like writing and writing and writing constantly. I wrote different things. I wrote plays. I wrote poetry, especially when I was a teenager, around the age of my narrator and the Aziza. So I wrote poetry. I think I wrote screenplays at a point, and I wrote lots of stuff, different kind of stuff, and just tried my hand at like different genres. And I think it's very good training for a novelist, because a novel can do almost anything, and sometimes I mean the novelist is being pushed towards areas that might not be of great comfort, but which they have to go and they have to like deliver, yeah, for the reader.
Yeah, so that's an interesting kind of way you got to here. So take me back to that first part. You said that a lot of the books that were in the libraries that you were reading were donated. I'm just curious, how diverse were the writers in there? Were you getting all European writers? Were you getting African writers? Were you getting American writers inside of those books that were in the library that you're reading? Because I'm wondering, what are your influences to getting you
Yeah,
to writing the way you are?
yeah. So I read like many of the books in the library were, of course, um, like British, I think Irish, like literature, and of course some American books there too. I remember like one of the first American books I read. I think it should be The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, I know, by Mark Twain, and also it was, yeah, like a different experience in a way too, and yeah, like different from like this British or Irish way of looking at things, and all. So, but it was mostly like Western literature, like European
Right, right.
literature. One of my favorite books at the time was, I mean, it's a book called The Swiss Family Robinson by Johann David Weiss, and all. Yeah, and I
Right.
love the book, how it feels element of science like in the book. How, I mean, this Swiss family who were traveling right to New Guinea, and they are shipwrecked, like they experienced a shipwreck, and they had to like struggle to survive whatever in an uninhabited island, and so and all that. So it was also, and I had to use science, I had to use so many things, and it was fun for Richard reading the book then. And I read, of course, many European stuff, but much later, I like my school began to like buy some books, right? So there were some like Nigerian novels there. Yeah, I remember reading like a book about Shaka Zulu, right?
Mhm.
The yeah, so but it was mostly European anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can imagine, and I can see a little bit of the influence in there, some of the references you have in the book. But you also talk a little bit around how you wrote poetry, how you wrote in different formats. What was that an important piece of how you developed the character? Because it made it into the final book. Was that, are you hinting that some of the stuff that the main character did was really your life, or are we reading a biography?
Yeah. So I read as a teenager, of course. My reading, of course, began to change. I mean, at some point, I read most of the books in my library, and there was almost nothing else to read, and I began to read the encyclopedias and all that, and I would read them page by page, read everything from history to electronics to like anything, whatever. So but as a teenager, I read like one of the books I read then I really fell in love with, and all the book that also hugely challenged me. I mean, it's a book called Black Boy by Richard Wright. I'm sure, like Americans, yeah, know the book a lot, read the book a lot, and so I mean, a very wonderful book. Like I need to read the book again now, anyway. But a very wonderful book that for the first time like made me like aware. I mean, of my race, my skin color, and all that, right? Made me to think of some of this very profound stuff, and in a way, the book also seemed to like foreshadow the kind of world that I would grow up in,
Mm.
like a world full of a racialized world, a world full of so much injustice and violence and all that. And again, I strongly related to the book because I at the time also then I had already decided that oh I would want to be a writer when I grew up and all that. So and the book is also about Richard Wright, about his desire to become a writer and all that. So of course I wrote poetry and as a teenager, I found poetry as this very wonderful device, tool, medium for like, um, I mean, unraveling myself, understanding my emotions. I also found it hugely therapeutic too. And when writing this novel, my novel, one of the greatest breakthroughs I had was realizing how my character, my narrator, would find poetry very useful for unraveling himself for the reader, for uh, directly addressing like punching whatever the things he feels deeply. For again unraveling, for coming to terms with his anger, with his rage, his angst, and all that. And yeah, I have whatever. I found that really interesting anyway, and I wanted to just do that in the novel.
No, you built a very complex character in Andy. Uh, to be so young, to have so many things happening in his life, around him, and trying to figure out life as he went along. Poetry seemed to be a really good tool to kind of help process that, as you mentioned.
Mm,
So
mm,
let's talk a little bit about Andy. Andy, I guess when we meet him, is 15, 15 or so.
yeah,
And there is a ton of stuff that's happening in his life. He's trying
yeah,
to
yeah.
navigate friendships,
Mm,
family, uh, even a father that's not there. Talk to me about like what made you put the pieces and elements that are in there in Andy's life. What made you put those pieces in there? So the complexities with
yeah,
his
yeah,
parents, with
yeah,
with
yeah,
even what's happening in his community.
yeah. So like this novel actually happened, like came to me, like should I say accidentally, unconsciously. I mean, for a good chunk of the writing process, for especially the very first part anyway, it was so unconscious and things were developing very organically. Like I didn't fully know what I was doing, but I knew I was writing something important, something that was important to me, and something that was also about my community and all that. So I was just chasing and to see how the narrative like developed anyway. So, for example, the book came to me in one wonderful moment of inspiration. I This was in June 2018. It was one evening like that, and I was sitting in my living room, and then suddenly this voice just comes to me, and it's this powerful voice that wants to be heard. That wanted me to, to transcribe it. Yeah, and the voice had so much shame about it, guilt, this desire to confess and all, and then and so I had a BlackBerry phone I used for writing at the time. So I just picked up my BlackBerry and I began to like chase after the voice to try to, yeah, to unravel it ever on the page. So after writing, I realized that the piece I had written was like the most truthful, the most powerful, truthful in quotes, powerful piece of writing I had composed up to that time in my life and all. And what that is so important to me is because that piece of writing seemed to, I could feel it, even though it wasn't obviously there. Like, yeah, in fact, that piece of writing, those 500 words I wrote on my BlackBerry phone, they form the current opening of the novel. Yeah, the current opening of the novel. Anyway, so at that time, I was just so aware of that. Like, it was so clear to me how that piece of writing had so much dimensions. To it, all these dimensions that you mentioned. The family story, the family complications, um, and this relationship with his mother, the shame he feels about her, the shame and the love too he feels towards her, and the absence of paternity in his life, like the absence of a father figure in his life, the violence, the chaos of his community, of his country, and all those different complications. So they were just all there, like subliminally, like subterraneously in that piece, and so I was just in this wonderful. I wrote the beginning of the first round of the novel in this crazy frenzy. I just wanted to like put everything down, and it was very feverish and all that, and it is a wonderful experience writing. Yeah,
One of
writing
the
that.
toughest parts of reading this book, and you just hit on it, was here it is. You have this young man who loves his mom,
Yeah,
right? But he's also asking questions about dad because dad's missing in his life.
yeah,
And he's asking those, and then he finally has that conflict where he potentially meets dad. And then now he's got this conflict of mom didn't want him to see dad. He now sees dad. He's always wanted to see dad. And now he's got to reconcile that with his relationship with his mom. And I think he played that so beautifully because it wasn't clean, it wasn't easy, and you wouldn't have expected it to be, especially with dealing with a 15-year-old teenager, right? And so he did what he would normally do, which is question, have trouble with it, want to talk about it, not talk about it. There was so much in there, so many
yeah.
depths and layers. I think you did that wonderfully. There's a couple
Thank
other
you.
characters I loved, and we can't talk about all of them, of course, but
Yeah, yeah,
there was this connection with Fatima, right? So
yeah, 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 yeah,
it was the on my level, same age group, really smart. I'm smart, you're smart.
yeah,
But there was something in the middle, and you touched on this a lot throughout the book, and that was religion.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
for context, Fatima is a different religion than Andy, and so in that country setting, they couldn't make that work because of the religions. So talk to me a little bit about that particular issue. One, is this something that you just made up for the book, or is it something that's real? And then
yeah.
two, you know, what made you put that divide in there, especially for these two characters?
Yeah, it's a powerful question. Like religion, it's a very, very like interesting thing. Like I'm hugely like interested in religion. I come from a very religious background. My parents were, my family is like still like a very Catholic family, I know. So like huge Catholicism anyway. And anyway, Nigeria, my country, is this very like religious country. Like it's very religious. Like, I don't know how to stress the very but here, but it is very. Um, and northern Nigeria, it's and like has like the majority of the population in northern Nigeria is Muslim, and that is where like I grew up in. But my parents are from southern Nigeria, although I grew up in the north anyway. And southern Nigeria like have more like Christians there and there. So the population of the like the percentage is like 50-50, right? You would say like 50% most 50% Muslims in the country, 50% Christians in the country. Um, so like religion is so important because in my country, Nigeria, religion is this primal force, this powerful force that seems to preordain almost everything, that seems to determine the other systems of the country. Like for example, in Nigeria, like religion intertwines almost everything, like almost every system, be it whether health or education or the economic or social system, like almost every system. Yeah. And so like writing about, in my opinion, writing about like Nigeria, and not just Nigeria, even you could say many other post-colonial societies, is also writing about religion. Um, and so religion is so important. And so I wanted to like um, to explore that more and more in my novel. Um, so they're talking about Fatima now and Andy. I mean, there's so many things I could see about that because I mean that dynamic between like a Christian and a Muslim is not often like written about a lot, even in my country, even in Nigerian literature, you know. And so I also wanted to reflect on that. And anyway, and I mean, I love these two characters so much. I mean, Andy and Fatima especially so. I mean, because I mean, she's and like both of them, they have so much in common. Like they are both smart, they both
Yep.
understand each other. In a way, like they are actually like the perfect fit for each other. But
Yes.
religion is that I don't know that chasm, that's I don't know, that's bridge or whatever that just continues to divide them, you know. and
Mhm.
and and that is the situation too in my country. Yeah, I mean, religion continues to divide us, even though this religion we're talking about here is not even our own indigenous religion. We're talking about like Western religions or Middle Eastern religions or whatever. Yeah, or yeah. So talking about Christianity and Islam here. Yeah. So one of the saddest aspects about this novel for me is how, despite how Andy and Fatima, despite how I guess I said, despite how they seem to be like made for each other, like yeah, and they have huge understanding between each other. Like they just cannot like pursue a relationship together because of like religion. And so that Andy, my narrator, feels that he has a better chance of like pursuing a relationship with actually a white girl, somebody who he has a blonde girl, somebody who he has like very little in common with, you know, which is like the whole sad aspect of the whole post-schooling experience. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was very apparent because there was a few conversations in there where Andy actually said, she's beautiful, she's smart,
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
capable, she's all of this, and still we have this thing that divides us, and
Yeah.
it was a sad part of the love story, right? So it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
still beautiful to see that they could work through these things, and but
Yeah.
just to know that divide was there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
I want
go ahead.
I want him to I mean, even though in my novel now, religion is just what divides them, I know. But it's always interesting. Like one of my friends keeps saying that she always says that humanity always finds a way to divide itself, right? I mean, even in America, for example, I mean, where maybe America anyway, America is already hugely divided, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there's so many things that's going on in America. Let's not even talk about that's even more complicated. But like in my own country, where things like race is not an issue. I mean, we're all like black, we're all Nigerians, right? But we just still can't be together. We just still can't work together to form a nation. You know, I mean, we're still hugely divided by so many things. You know, yeah,
Oh, I love that. I'm going to use that, by the way. So I'm going to give you credit when I do. No,
Yeah.
and there was so much to it, and I just can't imagine being 15 years
Mm,
old
mm,
and still trying to find myself and still trying to learn
mm,
what I want to do, and
mm,
then dealing with all of these issues, specifically that happened in his family and this, because we have those same things here. It's just
mm,
to have the family layers on top of it, things that are happening,
mm,
just makes
mm,
it more and more complicated for a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, or even an adult to kind of
mm,
work through those things. So
mm.
definitely well written. You laid it out for us, and we got to kind of follow along the journey with them. So there's something else that I wanted to ask you about.
Yeah.
In the book, there's a viewpoint from what was the friendship group called? It was,
I mean, Droogs, scavengers, or
yeah. That group, they had
yeah,
views of what other countries look like
yeah.
and
Mm,
how things work.
mm,
They thought it was just perfect and peaceful and all sorts of stuff.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
that prevalent today in Nigeria? Because I thought you added those pieces in there. It was very funny to hear how wonderful
yeah,
they thought it was on the other side of the grass.
yeah, yeah.
But for sure, it was a lot of views on what life is like. Um, Even I think there was one comment in there about the girls were taller because they ate greens. It was just, things that if you've never lived in these countries, you may have just
Yeah,
only TV
yeah,
or some video to watch.
yeah. Yeah, anyway, I mean, the last point you mentioned is perhaps is whatever crazy exaggeration anyway. But yeah, I mean, exaggeration by the characters in the book and all that. Anyway, yeah. So like my characters now, like Andy and his friends, I mean, they're growing up in contemporary Nigeria, right?
Mm,
And now the world is becoming, I mean, it's a cliche now, right, to say that the world is a global village and all the world is becoming smaller and all, and smaller and smaller. But that is actually the truth, right? Because like my characters now, they are living in this, I mean, this country and in this community that's experiencing so much turbulence, so much chaos, and so much failure at the same time. Um, and thanks to the internet and to like modern technology, like they have like a visceral or like a clear sense of what I mean life was like abroad and all. Yeah.
right.
Um, I mean, yeah, like I mean systems. I mean, there's the imagine like things work better. I mean, they've seen it in the movies. Like one of this I'm examining hugely in this book is that inundation of Western culture, and there's so much of that in Nigeria, and the huge presence of Hollywood, not just the presence but the influence of Hollywood, of course American media, British media, Western media, European media, and all that. Um, so they are like, I mean, they're living physically, they're living like in Nigeria, right? But like mentally, emotionally, that like their minds are, I mean, across the oceans, right? Overseas and all, like yeah, in the West. And so like I'm also so I try to like examine that how the impact it has on their own sense of self. Um, um, I mean the imprints on their psyche, like all these elements of the Western world. To digress slightly from that, like for example, when I was growing up, to when I was around that age, I usually used to feel that I mean 15, the age of my character. When I was 15, I used to feel that like my identity and as well as the identity of my friends and maybe even my siblings, like was a kind of a bifurcation, was dual, right? I I felt we had this African self, I mean, and this Western one, this Western self we inherited through the legacy of colonialism, through the huge inundation of Western culture, like in our community. And so, and for example, I mean, when we go to church, I mean, we had to worship the white Christ, white Jesus, and we had to, and we were told that our indigenous beliefs, systems of being, indigenous philosophies were wrong and all that. And when we go to school, um, and we were being we're being like punished, right? For or we're being caned actually for like speaking our own like indigenous languages, or even like pidgin English, a creolized version of English, which is spoken in Nigeria. So all these things. So I wanted to examine, I mean, the imprints on our psyche, on my psyche, or the psyches of many like young Nigerians coming of age, and like how it affects how we view the world, how we perceive the world, and all that. Yeah,
No, that was I appreciate that viewpoint because I think I had to keep reminding myself this is a 15-year-old boy.
yeah,
these,
yeah,
these are his friends, right? They're going to
yeah,
do and think and the mindset of a 15-year-old boy, no matter what country they're in. And I
yeah,
was even shocked to see that there was so many similarities between growing up as a 15-year-old boy here in the U.S. as it was in Nigeria. One specific example, there were some times where they were going around talking braggadociously about their genitalia and how big it
yeah,
was and
yeah, yeah,
how women
yeah,
would love them because of how
yeah,
big it was. And
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
thinking, if I didn't know that this was set in Nigeria, I could say that is New York City, that is
yeah,
LA,
yeah,
that is just young boys growing up. And I think you
yeah,
captured the essence of the character, especially Andy, but all the characters so well, and based on where they are in their lives and what they're thinking about, what they're doing. And
yeah. Thank
so
you.
here it is. If you have not read the book, uh, we are talking about the five sorrowful mysteries of Andy
Yeah.
Africa, and our wonderful author is here with us sharing about the book. So definitely check out the book. I think it's worth a good read. You can definitely check it out in your local libraries. Buy the book in the store, but make sure you support the author. I think it's a really good one. Uh, Here's something I actually wanted to ask you about, and this was more so on the viewpoint of religion. And I'm going back a little bit. There
Yeah.
was something that you wrote that, and I try not to give away too much for folks who have not read the book because I don't want to give away any spoilers. But this is not a spoiler for the story. Um, there was a text in there where it says, maybe God does exist. He allows one sacrilege now and then to fan our skepticism. He allows us to tear down his temple and sin under his nose, but like every sensible thing, he knows when to guard himself. This was after an incident that happened inside of
Mhm.
a religious building,
Mhm.
and everything was torn up, but this one space.
Yeah.
And I thought, it was such a way to kind of almost, and this is probably sacrilege in some religious spaces, but to humanify. I don't know if that's humanize or
Mm, mm,
God Himself around
mm.
making these types of decisions to guard Himself as opposed to
Yeah.
guarding the people.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought the viewpoint was so spot on as to what a young person would think about that kind of situation. That God
Yeah.
is somehow like, nope, you can't damage my small area. You can damage everything else, but not
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Like I said, you,
Yeah.
you, you kind of captured the
Yeah.
young mindset again, even in the middle of chaos,
Yeah.
so well. So very well done there.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So what was something else in the book that what was one of the hardest things to write? So
Mm,
I'm giving you a lot of praise on the character, but was it
mm,
storyline? Was it decisions around how much of the Nigerian culture to put in, the language to put in? I noticed that, and sometimes you had them speak in a deep dialect, and sometimes it wasn't. What was the hardest part around making a book that can work in English language, any language, being true to the culture? What was the hardest
mm.
part about writing this book specifically?
I mean, regarding the language and like the code switching, yeah, or code mixing, mixing other languages, switching linguistic codes, Yeah, I mean, I didn't find that. I mean, actually difficult to do because I mean that was like my experience growing up in Nigeria, and I mean you're just immersed in so many languages, so many cultures, so many ways of thinking and doing things, and So it just felt very natural for me anyway. And yeah, but like one of the things I think I struggled with while writing this book is the character, the British girl that Andy falls in love with, you know. And so, and I know the novel, it's told in the first person present tense mode and all, right. And so and it was so difficult, like writing not just her, but as in terms of the other characters. Like I have to, like, while trying to develop those characters, they're all through the development has to come through Andy's uh, point of view and all. And so like and that was a bit tricky for some characters, but it was even much more like difficult for Eileen because I mean she's this blonde British girl. She's uh, this chimera that Andy fantasizes um, about, and so like trying to convey her own experience without uh, making her like very one-sided or one-dimensional, um, and even like criticizing her and still making her appealing to Andy at the same time. Yeah, it was a bit tough to do, and especially like some of their developments in their relationship. Because as I said, the book is told in the present tense, and so like I had to like delineate very clearly like each change in mood, tone, and the development in the relationship. I had to do it without, of course, overwhelming the reader, without just giving mundane details, and doing things that would be easier to do, like in a retrospective narrative, like in a past tense narrative, where you can develop a scene very quickly with just a sentence or two. So, but I wanted to, in this novel, one of my intentions for writing this novel was to try to depict as much as I could, using all the devices at my disposal to demonstrate what it means, what it feels, what it tastes, or whatever, every aspect of being young and of and of coming of age, a contemporary northern Nigeria and all that. Yeah, yeah, that was just my intention. So that's a first person present tense mode came in came in very handy, very organically, very consciously, because it helps the reader to like partake directly in Andy's journey, yeah, of coming of age.
Yeah. One, I commend you for how well you executed it. So it worked out really well for me. And there's another character that I was thinking, it might have been some difficulties, and that was the mother. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
Tough situation. Easy
yeah,
to think of her as the villain because
yeah,
she
yeah, yeah,
left her son away from her father,
yeah,
and I think there was even the aunt or the sister
yeah,
who said, "Look, you got to learn to forgive her, even though she's
mm,
done some things that
mm,
you may not have liked." So I thought that character. I'm thinking, man, this how do you not make this character the evil person at the same time show her humanity, even the decisions she's made, and
mm,
still kind of like and love her as you go along in the book. So
yeah,
another great character as well. So there's more to them, but than we're
yeah,
giving. But the mother and Andy,
yeah,
tough
yeah,
characters.
yeah, yeah. It's one of, I mean, one of the most, for me, one of the personally like most interesting dynamics in the novel. I mean, like it's a very complicated relationship. I mean, he loves his mother. I mean, hugely loves her, and again, he's hugely angry. Well, not angry, but also hugely ashamed of her. I mean, he comments on how she smells, comments on or I mean, the way she did those are things, and even how she's going gray, all that kind of stuff. Like, it's yeah, yeah, but and again, he is very proud of his mother, even though he doesn't overtly, I mean, express that, right? Um, he sees how hard she works. I mean, how creative she is. She's a photographer. She runs around. She does very interesting things and all. But he also sees how, I mean, her life is very filled too, just like his country. How she um I mean, she has suffered so much violence at the hands of her previous relationships, her previous husbands, you know, and so much misogyny, sexism, and in a section of the novel, she actually says, "Oh, that I mean, women of our generation have to be like slaves, in quotes, to find love and all right." Yeah, the kind of community that, yeah. So in many ways, she represents like his country, like Nigeria, like how this country with massive potential, right? But that a country that continues to struggle, that continues to fail. I know, yeah,
And there was a comment to what you just said earlier in the book that got me, where he said that the mother was talking to Andy,
yeah,
and she was saying, "You got to learn how to cook because those days of women being slaves, like
yeah,
you were
yeah.
saying, said
Mm.
my generation stuck there, but these future generation of women should not. You should learn how to cook, and we shouldn't have
Yeah,
to be slaves in order
yeah,
to find love with you." I thought that
yeah,
was a powerful moment as well.
yeah,
And I don't know, maybe if Andy and his mom, if it was like flash forward to he was 30 and he could understand things more and she opened up about stuff, maybe that
yeah,
relationship and dynamic would have been a little easier because he's
yeah,
still 15, right? So
yeah,
she's probably
yeah,
like, he wouldn't understand anyway. So
yeah,
maybe I'll tell him when he gets older. And so I
yeah,
think some of the secrets, not knowing the previous husbands,
yeah,
not knowing his father, there was just so much that wasn't unpacked. How could you build a platform of understanding between the two?
mm,
And
mm,
like I said, I love this dynamic that you painted because I'm
mm,
seeing where the cracks and crevices are in the relationship,
yeah,
and I can see why they're coming to where they're going in the story. So you kind of walked us through it in such a very beautiful way. So
yeah.
for those
Thank
of
you.
you in the
Yeah,
chat, if you have a question, we have a few more questions for Stephen before we get out of here. But if you have a
yeah,
question, drop it in the comments, and I'll make sure we get to answering it. But we are readers here at Black Men Read. We love to read, and so inside of the book itself, you dropped titles of books. You dropped some
yeah,
earlier here. So
yeah,
let me ask this: as a reader, because you
yeah.
mentioned this, as a reader, what is the one great book that you would recommend for everyone to read?
Hmm.
It
I
could be
mean,
recent or in the past.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so hard to just choose a single book, right? I mean, because like every book has been written is important because the world is so huge, so complicated, and we need to see like just different perspectives on the world, you know. But if I have to choose just a single book, just a single book. I mean, if someone puts a gun to my head, you have to choose one book. I think I have to choose Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe.
Ooh,
It's
yeah.
the copy I read when I was 12 or so. Yeah, yeah, and you
Wait.
see
Hold that
how
copy up.
yeah, you see how
That
it
that looks like you have read that book a few times.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's like a gift from my cousin and all, and yeah, so
I
yeah,
love that cover.
yeah,
The cover I have for that book
yeah,
does not look like that. I need
yeah,
that
yeah,
cover.
yeah. So I think this was made for like Nigerian students or something like that. Yeah, and it has
Okay.
a very wonderful introduction. That's I mean, as a teenager when I read it, to just made me to begin to question and to how books are written and what goes on behind the scenes, like in the text. Yeah. So if I was to choose one book anyway, I think I would say Things Fall Apart by Chinua
Oh
Achebe.
wow. Look,
Yeah,
we got some
yeah,
folks who have read that book.
yeah,
Yes, they're confirming Things Fall Apart is
yeah,
a great
yeah,
book.
yeah, yeah.
And they're commenting that book like it has been read a few
Yeah, it
times.
does relate. Yeah, I mean, I've read. I mean, I know like many passages at heart, by heart, right? Like, yeah, in the book, yeah, yeah, I've read it so many times. Yeah, and
So
it's, I mean, just a wonderful book that defines my own experience, my own life. I know who I am today, and
yeah.
yeah, it's powerful.
So now that the book is finished and published and out in the world, are you digging back into reading? Or are you writing the next book? Are you reading a lot now?
Yeah, I've been like very, very busy, honestly, over the past like few months. I mean, I'm currently like completing my PhD, and that has involved me like, yeah, thank you, like reading and reading the whole thesis, you know, and yeah. So I hope to be done with that very soon, and then yeah, to move on to writing my next book. Yeah, I just can't wait to get writing again and all.
So,
Yeah,
are you at a point where you can tell us what the book is about, or
yeah. It's I'm just here at this crossroads. Like I mean, I don't know where the journey is. I'm just wonder what path should I follow, and but we'll see. Perhaps in a year's time, I should know exactly where I am also or where I'm going to. Yeah.
so we have a question, and it says, "Can you tell us how the cover art of your book came about? I can see some of the African patterns on the jacket." So we are
Yeah,
got a question about
yeah,
how this cover came about.
yeah, yeah. I don't have full details on that. I think I'll have to ask my editor or yeah, or people at Bloomsbury. But yeah. I mean the cover artist. I think her name is Patty Ratford, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean there was just one night like that. I mean, due to the time differences. So one night, I think it was around like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. or something, and I was just about to go to bed when I just saw an email on my phone, and so it's from just from my editor, my US editor, that a cover art suggestion, and then it was this. I mean, it was slightly different from this. I mean, the model is the model, yeah, using the cover is slightly different. If you did the very first one, yeah, so it was really wonderful. The colors, I mean, the halo, the patterns, and all. I think readers who read the book will get to see why everything is like this, right? Yeah, and I mean how it's references um, giving many animistic views of the world that my novel, I mean, explores, and also even some elements of Afrofuturism too, which my novel also like examines. And yeah, so and the cover is very wonderful cover. I mean, the themes that's all there, the colors are very wonderful, and I like uh, how it seems to change slightly in terms of the color, how the orange or the blue they seem to either take uh, precedence or take more precedence depending on the kind of lights the book is exposed to. Like when I change my room, the color of my lights, my room lights, it's good. You see how things will just change. So I love the cover. Yeah, it's a wonderful cover. And
Oh, they did a
the UK,
fantastic job.
yeah, and the UK cover. This is the UK cover. I don't know. Yeah, so readers might see it online, and yeah, and it's also a very good cover. I think Marilyn Monroe, and it's rated.
Is that
Yeah,
Eileen in the middle?
yeah. Yeah, I'm guessing yeah, Marilyn Monroe and yeah, and all the whole topic of like the rendition of Western culture in Nigeria and in Africa in general.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
it's a
right.
very catchy cover. Yeah, yeah,
So for those of you who haven't read the book, when you read the book, when you hear the name Eileen, now you got a visual to go with it. Oh
yeah,
man. So there are some things that are from
yeah,
Nigeria in this book,
yeah.
right? Have anyone has anyone given you any feedback who are from Nigeria about what you included or didn't include in the book?
Yeah, so like my partner does like she reads my work and all and now and then like when I was writing this she would say, oh, like this stuff you like you're not supposed to use this word for it. It's so maybe it's a bit too European or too like you should use something much more. I don't know she often like challenges like I mean what I do or she like makes me to rethink or to just yeah, I mean what I do in the book and all, and that's very helpful. But in terms of like reviews of the book by Nigerians, yeah, I think I've seen some comments and by Nigerians, and I know Nigerians have read the book and they yeah, and they usually love they love the book. I mean the ones I know anyway or know of, and they've given wonderful like responses to the book, which is really good. Yeah.
That's good. So you don't have any cousins or aunts who think that you wrote those characters about them in the book?
So I don't know. I don't think actually the cousins or the aunts have actually read the book yet. I mean, because it's not been published in Nigeria yet.
Okay.
So yeah.
Do you know when that will be? Is that coming?
Yeah, it's coming very soon. Yeah, I don't have a date now, but it's coming very soon. Yeah, we're still like in the final stages.
I
Yeah,
would love to hear what
yeah,
a Nigerian, especially anyone that may be in your family, thinks about the book. 'Cause
yeah,
what I find is that when you write books that are specifically around your culture, so if
yeah,
I was from New York and I wrote a book about New York, the
yeah,
people from that area really have a lot to say about the cultural pieces that you put in the book.
yeah,
So
yeah,
I'll be interested to hear what they say.
yeah.
So on that end, if we were trying to follow you to know what your next work is going to be, and where can we find you on social media, on the web, anywhere?
Yeah, currently I'm not, I've been, as I said, very busy. I mean, to completing a PhD, writing this novel, and also, I mean, I'm currently not on social media. I don't think I'm currently not on social media, but I have a website coming up soon, and so I think, yeah, readers will be able to see stuff on the website. I think my publishers, they do announce stuff about my book online on social media, and I'm in Bloomsbury, so I think like readers will get to see like what is coming next from them, and all.
Well, we
Hopefully, yeah,
want to keep eyes on you. Stay in touch. I think the work is well worth the read. The Five Sorrowful Mysteries of Andy Africa. If you're looking for a good read, looking for something new and interesting to add to your collection, I think this book is worth it. Uh, I don't know if this will make it into audiobook. I don't know if that's on the list, but definitely pick it up.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
normally
Just
not a quick reader. I'm going to make some more confessions here. I ate this one up. So
oh
it
wow,
kept me
thank
engaged.
you.
I was
Yeah,
able to go through the story. I kept
yeah,
wanting to know what Andy was going to do next or think next.
yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted to know it was him and Eileen or him
yeah,
and Ema
yeah,
or some
yeah,
other variation. Was there going to be a plot
yeah,
twist in there? So definitely check
yeah,
it out.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It has been an absolutely amazing chat with you, Stephen. Is there anything that you want to say to the folks before we get out of here today?
I'd just like to thank everyone for joining us. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, it's been a wonderful conversation. And yes, there's actually an audiobook of the book, so I think readers can listen on audio. Yeah, if they prefer that medium. Yeah, and so it's been a wonderful conversation, and thank you all for joining, and thank you, Demetrius, for the wonderful questions and the wonderful comments on the book. And yeah, and so everyone, I hope, I mean, the readers get to, I mean, read the book. And yeah, I've really enjoyed reading the book. I mean, for me, the latest test for me is like whatever I write, I want to enjoy reading it. Yeah, and I've really enjoyed reading the book, and I hope many other readers do enjoy reading the book as well. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Demetrius, for having me.
And look, thank you for staying up late to hang with
Yeah,
us.
yeah,
So we really
it's
appreciate
almost,
that.
yeah. Thank you
I
so
don't know
much.
if you're going to sleep or you're just going to hang out and just stay up all day, but we really appreciate your time. We appreciate your work, and we look forward to not only sharing this with other people, but also
Yeah,
reading your next work and your work after that. So thank you so much, Stephen, and you have a wonderful evening. For those of you who've been checking in, thank you for checking in and listening to Stephen. Go get the book. Check it out at your local library. Buy it in store. Buy it online. We have it at Resist Booksellers here in Petersburg, Virginia, and online at resistbooksellers.com. But definitely, if you're looking for a good read, we're also looking to talk about the book. So here at Black Men Read, we also want to come in conversation and talk about the book. I would love to hear your thoughts about the book. So check us out at Black Men Read on Facebook or on Goodreads in our 2 chapters. So thank you very much. Good night, everyone. Good morning for some, and we'll see you
yeah,
next.
yeah. Cheers. Thank you so much. Bye. Thank you.